Welcome to Brutally Honest Talk Radio, where you will learn about an issue minus the BS. We don't always say what you want to hear, but what you need to hear about the issues of the day. Here's your host, Inger, along with Elmo, with his political insight and commentary.
Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first show of 2022. I am Elmo the Dopadelic. She is Inger the Trailblazer, and you're listening to the one and only, always brutally honest talk radio. Inger, what's going on, and how you doing?
Hi. Well, Happy New Year. First of all, Happy 2022 to everybody. And I hope it's going well so far. And we're going to jump right in. The topics we're going to talk about today, Biden says he's going to run for president in 2024. Interesting. Rand Paul and George Stephanopoulos had a head-to-head recently. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the definition of a hero, 1995 versus the definition of a hero in 2022.
Yeah, basically.
Basically.
Yeah, definitions keep changing without anybody asking permission. They just start changing the meaning of words. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So this is recently, Biden was asked if he was going to run for re-election. And this is what he said. This was his response. Check this out.
Okay.
I want to ask you about something I asked weeks before the election when we sat down. You said you would absolutely serve 8 years if elected. Do you plan to run for re-election?
Yes, but look, I'm a great respecter of fate. Fate has intervened in my life many, many times. If I'm in the health I'm in now, if I'm in good health, then in fact, I would run again.
And if that means a rematch against Donald Trump?
You're trying to tempt me now. Sure. Why would I not run against Donald Trump for the nominee? That would increase the prospect of running.
All right, so that was it. That was a clip that I caught. And so I don't know. It's hard to predict and to speculate when you don't have all the pieces. We don't know what their plan is. I'm telling you that every Democrat in Washington, D.C. tonight does not believe that Biden is capable of continuing the job. If he stayed in the health that he's in now, that's not capable. And in 2024, at the best, he would be the way that he is now. He's not going to improve. He's either going to be where he is now or worse.
Yes. And how old is Joe? Is he 79 or 80? I was trying to figure out how old he is now and how old he'll be in 4 years. And now add another 4 years onto that, and that doesn't look good. He's already feeble. He's already having issues. He's definitely not as strong mentally as he was 10 years ago.
Yes.
When Obama was president and he was VP. So yeah, I think this is just him. I think this is what they want him to say. So,
yeah.
Like you said, I agree with you. I don't think anybody in D.C., they don't believe he's going to be running in 4 years. As a matter of fact, they have an issue now because they don't have a bench. Who's going to come? Nobody likes Kamala at all. So who's there? Who's left? Who's going to step up and do that? There's no bench. There's no bench strength back there. So there's talk that Hillary, they're trying to put her up again. So I don't know where that's going to land, but good Lord. I mean, she's a 3-time loser. So this makes no sense. So he's just saying what they want him to say.
And it's a very good statement to make, to say that he's saying what they want him to say, because we know that he kind of admitted it, where he pulled out the list and said, these are the things that I'm not supposed to get off the beaten path.
Yes.
And we know about the microphone in the White House or in press conferences, if you want to call them that, where somebody continually is hitting the mute button.
Yes.
Interrupting, kind of how the woman interrupted Kamala when she was talking with Charlemagne.
Yes.
but not as abrupt and blunt, and another person coming in, sticking a big head in the camera. Hey, how you doing? Here I am. Yo, I think we have some technical difficulties going on, and we need to be G4 classified and get this stuff approved by the FDA.
By the alphabet soup. Yes.
So
and-
we
go
we
ahead.
know that he can't. He's only going to say what they tell him to say. They may let him speak on a subject, and this is what you want to say. You know what I'm saying? Just giving the freedom of arrange these words on the Soul Train board however you want. But when it's finished and the letters lay, this is how it needs to be. This is what it needs to spell out.
Exactly. So that's it. That's it. Just, I agree totally. And I want to jump on one thing you said.
Yeah.
Fate. Who's Fate? Who the heck is Fate?
Well, when I hear him say that,
You know?
what I hear is Biden going, man, I'm a real lucky bastard.
Yeah.
Think about all the years I've been in Congress and people just reelecting me without me having to do anything.
Right.
Nobody ever really heard of me until Obama chose to choose me as his wingman, as his
That's
Scottie
right.
Pippen. And if it were not for that, I would have lost by a landslide to the other people that were running, trying to get the nomination. So all I can say, that's what I think, that's what I hear, is he's just lucky. He is more than Lou Gehrig. Remember he gave that speech, I consider myself the luckiest man alive. Like how this guy can go. I mean, also to have the surgery that he had, he said that remember, he was talking about it on camera. They drilled down into the top of his head after he had an aneurysm, and they did surgery on his brain, and it rewired some stuff, put the blue and red wires back together and then patched him up.
Yeah.
By the way, just as a side note, I just figured out for the first time last Halloween that the reason why Frankenstein has a flat head on top is because the guy who did the makeup and designed him, he wanted it to be a lid. So that after they popped their brain back inside, it was. I said, I never knew why Frankie had a flat head before. He had a flat top. So yeah, it's a miracle. And the other thing I'll say, I want to remind people, before the election, Biden was talking about whoever is my running mate, whoever is the vice president, they need to be able to step in at any time and take over, just in case I'm not going to be physically up to the job.
Wow.
And then the reporters just kind of laughed it off like, ha ha ha, yuck, yuck, yuck. He's like, no, I'm serious.
Wow. Wow. And because reporters don't do their job and they are basically propagandists and not reporters, there was recently interaction between Rand Paul and George Stephanopoulos. I can't remember. Maybe it was one of those press shows, obviously, on ABC that political Sunday morning talk shows they get into.
So that's basically what they're talking about here is the results of the election, fraud, and whether or not the election was stolen on one side or the other.
The Department of Justice, led by William Barr, said there's no widespread evidence of fraud. Can't you just say the words, this election was not stolen?
What I would suggest is that if we want greater confidence in our elections, and 75% of Republicans agree with me, is that we do need to look at election integrity, and we do need to see if we can restore confidence in the elections.
Well, 75% of Republicans agree with you because they were fed a big lie by President Trump and his supporters who say the election was stolen. Why can't you say?
Well, I think where you make a mistake. Hey, George, where you make a mistake is that people coming from the liberal side like you immediately say everything's a lie instead of saying there are two sides to everything. Historically, what would happen is if I said that I thought there was fraud, you would interview someone else who said there wasn't. But now you insert yourself in the middle and say the absolute fact is that everything I'm saying is a lie.
Well, because, Senator, I said what the president said was a lie because he said, hold on a second. He said the election was stolen. This election was not stolen. The results were certified in every single state after counts and recounts.
You're saying that absolutely you're saying there was no fraud in it's all been investigated. That's just not true.
It's not what I said, sir. I said the Department of Justice found no evidence. Let me finish my point.
You said
You said something that was not true.
You say we're all liars. You're just simply saying we're all liars. And
I said it was a lie that the election was stolen.
Premise that you're right and we're wrong. Well, let's talk about the specifics of it. In Wisconsin, tens of thousands of absentee votes had only the name on them and no address. Historically, those were thrown out. This time they weren't. They made special accommodations because they said, oh, it's a pandemic and people forgot what their address was. So they changed the law after the fact. That is wrong. That's unconstitutional. And I plan on spending the next 2 years going around state to state and fixing these problems. And I won't be cowed by liberals in the media who say, there's no evidence here and you're a liar if you talk about election fraud. No, let's have an open debate. It's a free country.
There's no widespread evidence of election fraud that overturned the results. That was stated as well by the Department of Justice led by President.
I guess the first thing, Rand Paul is right by saying back in the day, if there was something that was popular or a growing concern or belief, you would have one person from each side. Right. But what you do is you decide that your opinion is right. You insert yourself in the middle, meaning Rand Paul is on one side. Mm-hmm. Rand Paul is on one, and then he's representing the other point of view, or he's representing the Democrats, and he shouldn't be doing that.
Exactly. I was waiting for a journalist to show up in the conversation because between Stephanopoulos and Paul, because Stephanopoulos was not that journalist.
Well, we've seen on Fox and CNN, sometimes there'll be Kelly or somebody in the middle, and then they'll have the screen split up into 3 sections, mm-hmm. and then you'll have opposing views on either side of them. Mm-hmm. So he brings him on just to say, or can you admit now that the election was not stolen? Well, how can I admit or how can I say that something was stolen or was not when I don't have all the pieces of information?
Exactly. Don't have all the facts. And he was throwing out, I think as Stephanopoulos said, 75% of GOPers either don't believe it or something to that effect. It's like if a journalist had been there, what should have been said is, according to this particular poll, and we polled these people, likely voters, registered voters, something, 75% of those people said that they don't believe, let's back it up with some facts. Don't just throw numbers out there and you're not giving a basis for the numbers. A journalist would have given a basis for the numbers to say this is where it came from. He never did that. And like you said, he is definitely inserting himself in the middle, which means he cannot be fair and objective. So why is he on there? If you're trying to have a conversation, then have a conversation. And he's not presenting, I think.
To get a guy up on television, and you can tell by the look on Paul's face, he didn't know the question that was coming. He didn't know what he was about to say. So it's almost like you twisting somebody's arm and say, uncle. All right, you're defeated. Now admit it.
Right.
Why are you willing to admit now, look, we're in the United States of America, 50 different states. And I bet you that however much voter fraud there was, there's a different level and a different percentage in each state.
Absolutely.
The reason why what came out in Arizona came out there because it was obviously very close. Mm-hmm. Or else it wouldn't have been an issue, because they can start calling a state at 6 o'clock in the evening on election day, yes, when it's obviously very one-sided.
Exactly.
So, people heard what they heard, and we commented on that a little, but a couple other things that I will add is we have got to, is 2 things. Number one, we have got to get the whole election process and the counting of votes, re-engineered or redone. We know that we saw pallets of ballots, like 50,000 on one pallet that they didn't start counting until election day, mm-hmm, on paper ballots counted by hand. This is so suspicious. Get a cutoff day. Say you cannot, unless you're going to stand in line on election day, if you want to vote in advance, you can't do it any less than 2 weeks before the election.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the only other thing I was going to say, we need to figure out if we want the electoral college or if we want to use the actual popular vote. Okay. Because I don't believe there's corruption or whatever in the electoral college. They look at the number of votes that they know about, that they've seen. Now, if a state has 2 million votes and it's off by 100,000, the electoral college, they're gonna have to go by what they see, look at what part of the state those people are located in, and based on how much they're spread out, decide who's gonna win that state. Mm-hmm. The electoral college is not the problem. You want to change the shoelaces and the shoelace tips, but you got a hole in the bottom of the shoe. So, right. Okay, let's put some gold shoelaces on and see if that makes a difference.
Right. Just pretty it up. Yeah. I'll go to the electoral college here. The electoral college, what it does is ensure that a state like California and a state like Rhode Island, the populations are very different in terms of numbers, that Rhode Island has just as much of an impact as California does. We don't need to go to the popular vote because that's quote unquote democracy. We're not a democracy, and let everybody know this. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. A democracy is mob rule. A democracy says if I don't want you on the homeowners association board and I don't want you in the neighborhood, then we as a neighborhood voted that you're not going to be on the board and you're going to get kicked out of the neighborhood. That's what a democracy does.
Well, let me ask you a question, because sometimes you hear the phrase, you hear America being a democratic republic. So what you said something different.
Constitutional republic.
Constitutional republic. Okay.
Yeah, we're governed by the U.S. Constitution. Should they choose to read it and abide by it, that's what we're governed by. So folks got to realize we're the United States of America, true enough, but we're 50 different labs as well. Yeah. So that means that, and it says in the Constitution, any powers that are not specifically delegated to the federal government are then passed down to the state government. Sure. And then any powers not specifically enumerated in the state government belongs to the people. It comes down to the people. So that's kind of how we're governed. So for going, to come full circle to say that we should go by popular vote is not the way to go, because that's not we're structured, and it's worked for 200 plus years as long as they abide by it. In terms of the ballot palettes, there's a chain of custody when it comes to voting that needs to be abided by. I mean, you can't have and whether the ballots were clean ballots in terms of not being voted, or if they were ballots that people had used to vote, there needs to be a chain of custody going on to say that, yes, this is secure. We have, we're watching this every step of the way. That's part of election integrity as well. Another thing is, and we had it here in Georgia, and I think they've had it in Texas as well. Folks, oh my gosh, people can't get IDs. How are you people going to vote when they can't get IDs? Blah, blah, blah. Well, again, that's election integrity. You can't, citizens are supposed to vote. American citizens are allowed to vote. If you can't prove that someone's an American citizen, then they shouldn't be voting. And let's go a step further. Even though, let's say somebody may have forgotten their ID that day or something, there are provisional ballots that people can cast, and once the vote is cast, then the electors in that precinct and the people governing that process can go back and check just to verify and be sure that everything is okay. So, it's just it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And what else? There's one more thing I was going to say. Oh, in the midst of this, Rand Paul was right. They did change the laws after the fact. And the legislatures are the ones who are allowed to change the laws as representatives of the people. So Rand Paul was exactly correct. Yes, the legislatures did that. And, with Stephanopoulos saying what he's saying, you can't have an open debate about something. It's propaganda. Period. Yeah. You cannot have an open debate and have both sides there. Then
I don't know what show that was. He's on ABC though.
Yeah. I want to say it was Meet the Press, but I am not certain. not certain. But yeah, it's just
people need to know. I mean, I've been voting for over 30 years, and from the very first election that I voted in, with all black people running the polls and assisting, when you show up there, you registered, for different districts or whatever your voting location is, and then you have to show your ID and identify yourself.
Right.
And none of those black people ever complained or said this is Jim Crow.
Right.
So that's a lie. What they're really wanting to do is make fraud legal.
Yes.
The people that want to make it so that you can vote without having to show your ID.
Exactly.
That's I mean, how could that ever increase fraud?
Right. Yeah.
I just can't prove who I am. That's all. I just wear a Halloween mask.
And one more thought on this: when voter laws are coming through, people, please read the legislation. Read it, and I'll give you an example from Georgia right quick. There was in the law in Georgia, it says that that you cannot hand out water to the voters. Let's say they're standing in line waiting to vote on a, June, July day, whatever.
Yeah.
That you cannot hand out water to them. Well, no, you can't. But there's nothing to say that a cooler cannot be sitting out there for them to go grab a bottle of water and go get the water. That's okay to do. So, but here's Stacey Abrams and her ilk. Oh my gosh, you're going to have people out here passing out because they can't get water in the middle of summer in Georgia. Seriously. So again, coming full circle, to be brutally honest, read the legislation before you start to comment on it.
And I have a question about that. If I'm standing in line and I live in Georgia and I know I'm in Georgia and it's a hot day and it's 95 degrees outside, this stuff that we can buy in Kroger and Publix and Farmer Jack, can we bring our own? I mean, is it okay if I have this in my pocket or have a couple of bottles of water with me?
Now you're talking about being self-sufficient, and there you go. You must be a Republican. You want to bring your own water?
Maybe I kept it in the freezer or the refrigerator before, or maybe I brought a cooler. Yeah, it's stupid stuff like that.
You mean want the government to take care of that for you? Come on.
Yeah. I want the government to just give me free water. We need to stop paying for it.
There you go. I do believe that as well. And now folks are, like I said, definitions are changing. Like the definition of a vaccine, it used to be, oh, you get vaccinated, you can't get it anymore. Now it's more like a therapeutic instead of a vaccine. There was the polio vaccine, which once you took it, you didn't get polio anymore. And now there's the COVID, air quotes, vaccine, but you can still get COVID even though you have the vaccine. So as definitions are changing.
And let's talk about that for a minute. And it is definitions. Then we can transition to the main thing.
Yeah.
But people have brought up the flu vaccine and the polio vaccine as examples. Okay. So I think sometimes people get confused or think of the definition of a cure. A cure is you're already sick. And now we're going to give you something to get well, to make it go away, which a vaccine is a preventative thing.
Yes.
Now, I want to say to the people that do that and say, well, I don't want to get the vaccine because I didn't know what's in it. And they don't have a laundry list of ingredients or what's in the flu vaccine, but they get that. It's like, stop listening to these other people. Think for yourself.
Yes.
And make this stuff make sense to you.
Exactly.
But, I started getting the flu vaccine about 2014. Even though it's a vaccine, I would come back every year. So I think that with the polio vaccine, and polio being what killed Roosevelt, and when a disease kills the president, it's going to get the whole country's attention.
That's true.
The urgency of it. But still, that was 80 years ago, 75 years ago. So at that time, the numbers were much bigger until it got to our generation, or people were born in the 60s or 70s. They were eradicating it. And then I think it was in the 80s, I think, when there were no more cases of it. So you basically had to choke it off, strangle it, so that it couldn't be spread. They got it under control. The numbers got smaller and smaller. So I'm just saying that, like, people say vaccine, and then somebody in 6 months they say you should get a booster. People losing their mind. Like, if it's really a vaccine, I shouldn't need a booster.
Mm-hmm.
Look, let's figure out what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes. And piggyback on what you're saying, I believe that's why there's the hesitancy. If folks had just been upfront, this is treatment, y'all. We're not sure, we might have to do something else. It's a virus. Obviously, there are different strains. Mm-hmm. As scientists, they should know this, and say, this is what's going on. If you want to get it, go ahead and get it. We might have to come up with another booster or whatever later on. That'll be your decision. But just be honest with people up front and say, we're learning as we go along too. I think people would have been very forgiving around that. Whereas now you have people that are suspicious and they're totally standoff from it because of the message that was sent during this time. We're almost 3 years into 15 days to flatten the curve. And it's like, y'all, enough. It's becoming exhausting.
I just saw Biden say this week, he was talking to somebody and he's got the American flags behind him. He's at the podium and he's like, come on. All you got to do is get vaccinated. There's plenty of them. They're ready to go. See, I got the vaccine. I'm safe. Right. All you got to do is get vaccinated. And that's not what, when I went back in April, I think when I got Johnson & Johnson, I mean, they're not stupid. The pharmacy, they have a form for you to sign. And on that form, it says, this does not guarantee that you will not get the virus.
Right.
And by the way, you could die from this. I mean, they have to do that to cover themselves.
Yeah. We're talking about definitions and how they change. What is a hero? What is a hero? How would that be defined today in 2022 versus maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Bruce Jenner is a hero, and George Floyd is. Well, it depends on how he's dressed that day.
Okay, gotcha.
Got the same equipment, but but it's the same person.
Yes.
It's Bruce Wayne is Batman. It's the same person. So she was considered a hero and woman of the year and brought out on stage and given an award at something. Okay. Yeah. So this is today's definition, obviously. Some people have called him a hero. Nancy Pelosi said, "Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life. You are a hero." Let me talk about that, and then we'll go back.
Okay.
So why would you call someone a hero? Let's say Floyd was completely innocent and he had not been to jail 5 or 6 times, and he hadn't resisted arrest. Mm-hmm. He was just a regular blue collar worker, whatever, and was going to the store to get some cigarettes and whatever else he got, and he passed a counterfeit $20 bill unbeknownst to him, and let's say the store owner just called the police, didn't even confront him about it. They show up and he says, well, I'll be happy to give the merchandise back or whatever, and totally complied, and then things went sideways and he got killed anyway because it was just some bad cops, bad pigs. Mm-hmm. Okay. Even with that scenario, Floyd was not been a hero.
Right.
And this is why I say that. My definition of that in my generation, a hero is someone who saves lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you knew or I ever mentioned that John Kennedy, he fought in Korea in the 1950s. And he was in some kind of battle where, I don't know if they were on a ship or an island. There were 2 other guys that were with him who got injured. Mm-hmm. And, he got injured in combat and they were not able to swim. So John Kennedy, being a very good swimmer and a strong man, he pulled two guys like a couple of miles in the ocean. I'm talking about keeping their head and their mouth above water while he's with the other arm swimming, and he saved their lives.
Wow.
You know, they may have been good swimmers, but they're injured, so that they're not able to use either their arms or their legs.
Yes.
I mean, a real hero who then, becomes president. And then I'd seen, like, in the Iraqi war and in Afghanistan, there's a woman particularly that got injured in combat. So they had a parade for the veterans, for the people that fought. That's fine. And the media or the reporters who are telling the story, they're saying she's a hero. Well, unless she was running out with her gun protecting some civilians, she took a bullet for somebody that would have died had she not done certain things. If you understand what I'm saying, it's kind of the direction I'm going in. Being a victim doesn't make you a hero.
Exactly. Yes. And from what I understand, there has to be some type of action taken in order for someone to be a hero. Excuse me. And like you said, saving a life, obviously, going maybe above and beyond for someone who can't do for themselves, that sort of thing. I consider that hero, like police officers, 911, first responders, military heroes. I can definitely give them that. Some of the George Floyd, not a hero, like you said. And as a side note, I was watching, I think it was Court TV the other day, and they were, I guess, rerunning the case or something to that effect. It was during the holidays, and that was the first time I'd actually seen the footage of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it all this time. That was the first time. And he was actively resisting. It was the body cam footage of the police officers. He wasn't getting in the car. He wasn't doing what he was asked to do. They're saying, get in, please. No. I mean, there was just
claustrophobic.
I'm claustrophobic, whatever. Just so much that he just wouldn't do it. And he wasn't a hero. And even if, like with the situation that you posed, even if he had been just, oh my goodness, I didn't know, and started resisting us, or bad cops or whatever, he still would not have been a hero. A hero would have been, oh my gosh, in your scenario, I'm sorry for that. Let's see how we can make this correct. Because I had no idea myself, that was going on. That would have been an everyday hero, and just not needing to carry it to the extent that it was carried. So, but fast forward pop culture several years later, and you have people like celebrities, Kanye West or something, being a hero, or that it's like, it's messing up the definition.
Yeah. And then, situations like with the Floyd case, it really shouldn't have gotten out of Minneapolis. It was up to that city and that community to deal with the police officers and to deal with what happened. Absolutely. But people blow stuff up. I mean, understand that people were recording with their cell phones and everything, but still, it's like the media has been playing on racism and everything for so long and so many years that they got people thinking that there's I don't know if you saw this thing. This was maybe last summer, and Brandon Tatum was in Minneapolis interviewing people on the street, interviewing black people about cops and police brutality and killings. And he asked this young woman, black woman in her 20s, he said, how many black people do you think the police kill in Minneapolis? And she was like, oh, hundreds. Like within a year's time, the police are killing hundreds of people in her own city. She believes that.
Wow.
So she's obviously way, way off and has no idea that the total number of unarmed black people in America 2020 was 19 or 20. Okay. And that's because of the riots.
For the entire year.
For the entire country, 19 or 20 unarmed blacks. The year before that, it was 9.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now you look at the number of people that have gotten COVID, a true epidemic in America.
Yes.
You see the difference in the numbers?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And again, going back to our Stephanopoulos thing, who's pushing that? The press.
Right.
You know, there's a thing in communication called the news. They don't tell you. They used to tell you what to, or I'm probably getting it wrong, but they don't tell you what to think. They want to tell you what to think about. So, you know, whatever they're focused, that's what they want you to think about. That's it.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Like you're saying, going back to the 9 in 2019 and then 20 in 2020, you know, but the way the news presents it, it's like folks are getting out here shot every day and unarmed, you know. So
right, which is propaganda that leads up to defund the police, because there's a national effort to hunt down and shoot black people.
Yeah.
So the police are no good. They're evil. We need to strip them of their resources and their money. It's insane.
It really is. And Minneapolis, I think, went through that. And they quickly discovered that crime was getting out of control because they wanted to, quote unquote, defund the police. And so what they've done now is they've restored the funding. I think they even added some more to it to bring it back to where it should be. So yeah, those things don't work.
The new mayor of Atlanta, because they were all sworn in like within the last week, including New York City has a new mayor. You know, De Blasio is out. But I heard the mayor of Atlanta, he said he wanted to get like 10,000 street lights and then hire an additional 250 police officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
So that's going in the opposite direction of defunding or shrinking the police departments.
Yes, it is.
He said crime is number one problem in Atlanta.
Whoa. Wow.
Thank you. Because even though there's other problems, that feeds into so many other problems, like with how bad, how horrendous crime is for business.
Yes.
It's a business killer. They pack up and move out.
Yes, they do. Yes.
So people got to be safe, you know what I'm saying, to come to work and to shop and just to be able to generate money. They pull their money in themselves and pull up their stakes. Let me say one last thing about just the hero definition thing.
Sure.
And well, there are other kinds of heroes. Like, I think if you inspire someone and you cause them to want to go to college, you know, I remember when A Different World came out, and that was developed by Bill Cosby, just like the Cosby Show. When that came out, like the number of black people enrolling in college like doubled or tripled because that show inspired them to do that. So so any hero, it's got to be like a personal connection, how you're affecting people's lives, and inspiration can be a powerful thing.
Yes.
Right. The inventors, you know, all our great inventors and inventors of new, like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Those guys are heroes, you know, change the world, that kind of thing. Yes. But then the last example I wanted to give, because what made me start thinking of this was a couple of weeks ago, there was a George Floyd statue. I can't remember where it was, but it was like, you know how you have a park bench and then you have a statue next to it, and it was a masterful replica of his face and everything, a little bit bigger than, you know, human scale or real scale, and somebody had defaced it or done some kind of damage to it. Okay. So that made it to the news as a story. So, you know, I saw that and I'm like, they had a statue put together for George Floyd. Did they ever put together a statue for Ben Carson?
Huh. Interesting.
I mean, somebody who literally saved lives. Literally. I don't know how many, but he at one time was the #1 brain surgeon in America. Yes. And people from other countries were bringing their children to him to let him operate on their brains. All right.
Yes.
Now, there are other brain surgeons in America. Of course, one man, he can't do the whole country. But
Right.
if you're willing to go to him and pay more money and wait a little longer, whatever, there's obviously something going on in the brain cancer or the tumors or whatever, that if Carson doesn't do it, you're going to die.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, he knows some stuff that others, and then he has a team also of 10 guys that are doing surgery with him, like the Good Doctor. And I'm sure I would want to handpick my team, people that I can give instructions and I don't have to repeat anything. When I mention this tool or this instruction, they know exactly what to do. And Carson did dozens of surgeries where he was on his feet for 22 hours without a break. Still coherent and sharp and able to focus and save lives.
Yes.
All right. And this is a guy who, to my knowledge, he never committed a crime.
Nope. He is the definition of the American dream.
Yeah.
You work hard, you learn a skill, you become successful, you become the best. And he became the best, from a mother who couldn't read, and he and his brother, look at where they are.
From a single parent family. He wrote 2 books. One is called Gifted Hands.
Yeah.
And people can see the movie. Cuba Gooding played the grown-up Ben Carson. And when he was little, his mother was Kimberly Elise. And she had some mental problems. Like, she had to go to an asylum for a while and leave. And then I think stay with some other people. So, it was rough for him and his brother. So to come from that, because, Joe Biden is saying that black people in the ghetto don't know how to get on the internet.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So if you can't do that, I don't think that brain surgery is going to be in the cards.
Right.
Like Martin said in Big Mama, he ain't going to Harvard. The boy was jumping, it was bunk beds, and the boy was jumping off of the top bed face first, doing that dive, whatever, where you pow. So, just think about that. That is a real hero. But I mean, he ran for president on a Republican ticket. Even before that, you were not going to hear any of the Democrats pull him up and give him the Congressional Medal of Honor or whatever, like Trump did with Rush. At that State of the Union address.
Yes.
Because they don't want you to see how well you can do without their crutches.
That's it. They'd rather continue to give you the crumbs off the table instead of you getting at the table and having the whole loaf of bread for yourself. Right. And they want you to be happy with that.
How the whole critical race theory thing with being a victim. And somebody should make a meme and have Ben Carson on there and it say the opposite of downtrodden.
Yes.
If that's not what you want to be, flip the card over and see what this guy did, and you'll see what you. And then I imagine, Carson inspired a lot of white brain surgeons as well. Yes. It's not a matter of race.
It's not. It is not at all.
You know what I'm saying? Judge Mathis was like the first black judge with a reality show, and I'm sure there are little kids, kids who were little, people who were little at that time, watching him. Like without anybody even saying it, just an unspoken subconscious thing that he's a black judge. And they're thinking, I want to be that when I grow up.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? That to me, that's heroic.
It is. It definitely is. Wow. And on that note, do you have any final thoughts?
Just to tell people just to seek knowledge, and some people don't like to read and go digging deep, and I understand all of that. But your news sources, you want to do NPR, somebody called them CNNPR. So if you want to do that, we'll also listen to WSB. And listen to Hannity, listen to Don Lemon, listen to Hannity and listen to Don Lemon. And then watch which one is leaving out stuff.
Right.
Watch which one is, and then that should make you think. Why wouldn't he mention this?
Absolutely. And on that note, thank you for listening to this episode of Brutally Honest Talk Radio. If there is a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. Reach out to us at our email address. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review for us wherever you listen to this podcast. And hit the subscribe button on YouTube so you'll know when the next episode is updated. And we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, obviously YouTube,
iTunes,
Spotify, TikTok, and all those socials. We're out there. And again, have a happy 2022, and we will talk to you next week.
Yes, everybody, be safe and take care. Talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to Brutally Honest Talk Radio. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, reach out at brutehonestradio@gmail.com. That's BRUT, honestradio@gmail.com.